Oliver.
Oh, we're live. Welcome everyone to our weekly webinar, Stopping the Violence. It's good to see everyone this week again. Today, again, just give you a little history that our Stopping the Violence is we're concerned about gun violence and all the violence that is plaguing our communities, and looking for not only solutions, but looking for how we can bridge all those gaps of people out there who are doing extraordinary jobs and helping to curtail and reduce the risk of violence and violence that are prevailing in our communities as we speak today. Every day we hear things on the news about violent occurrences, but we're really grateful that today we have a very special guest, Council Member Emmanuel V. Remy. He will be our speaker, and his topic today will be the right response, youth and anti-violence. Let me just give you a little short synopsis of his bio, and to get a complete view of his bio, you can look it up on the website, Councilman Emmanuel Remy. He has served as the resident of Columbus on City Council since January 8, 2018. He is chair of the Administration, Environment, and Public Safety Committee. As the president of the NCC, Emmanuel worked with Northland Police Liaison, zone attorneys, environmental judge, and other city and state entities to close down 5 crime-ridden hotels by having them declared as a nuisance. Emmanuel is married to his wife, Liz, who is a Columbus City school teacher and serves as a school current Columbus Education Association, CEA representative. They have 3 children enrolled in Columbus City schools. Emmanuel is dedicated public servant and committed to uplifting neighborhoods and residents throughout the Columbus community. We are grateful to have him today. Why don't we bring him on? Councilman, how are you?
Thank you very much. I appreciate the introduction. It's great to be here and have the opportunity to share some thoughts and ideas and certainly answer questions that may come up as well.
Certainly. Well, welcome. We again want to reiterate your topic: youth, youth response, and anti-violence, young people and anti-violence. How do you see that in the work that you've been in, the activities that you have been partaking in order to reduce that or to address that?
Well, I think so. I kind of want to step back a little bit because you reminded me about the work that we did and I did as a community leader in conjunction with our zone attorney, our police liaisons, as we had an area that, my area of town had several bad actors as hotels, that were operating, and there was a lot of crime that was occurring in and out of those places. And so in the mid 2015-16 era, we ended up shutting those places down and creating a best-in-class, one-of-a-kind, legislation to do so as a policy here in the U.S. And so it's a policy that's been looked at from all over the U.S. And so when a bad actor comes into play, and we take them to court and get a nuisance abatement filed against them, they have strict requirements on security and a bunch of different markers in order to stay open and operate. But what we saw after we did this, especially in my area, that there was a 50% reduction in crime surrounding the hotels and motels that we were able to shut down. So Columbus has always been fairly innovative. And so fast forward to my tenure on council, the Columbus Fire Department has been somewhat of a leader in alternative response. I wanted to talk a little bit about that before we get into the youth side of things. And I apologize, some of my notifications keep coming up and making noise, but if you can bear with me. We have had a number of units as far as what we call our alternative crisis response, looking at individual calls of how to react to a particular caller, whether it's a mental health issue or something that along the lines of addiction. We want to get the right response to every single call that comes through, and it's not always a police response, which has been somewhat historically how safety has operated. Just send the police, but oftentimes police are not trained to deal with mental health issues. And so we've been very intentional about working towards, the right response for every single call that comes into dispatch. Taking that a step further then, and I can expound on the programs that we have, but thinking about our youth, and particularly as we've seen the effects of COVID, kids not being in school, the COVID changed a lot of things. I know I'm speaking to the choir as it relates. We all lived it, but it particularly hit some of our urban areas in ways that have really, we have yet to recover. And so, we are working very intentionally to make sure that we're funding programs that support our youth to try to be, in a position where we're hopefully preventing youth violence by getting them involved. We've been able to offer here in the city of Columbus millions and millions of dollars every year in the summer to support programs that relate to music or sports, agriculture, lots of community gardening programs, education, the trades, introduction to the trades, is the construction trades and driving trades. And so I just held a hearing last month to talk about the results that we saw over the summer. And we know that we need to broaden the funding that we give so that this doesn't just happen over the summer, but involves and engages our students on an annual basis throughout the year. We also, and I can get into more, I'll stop for a second and see if there's questions based on what I've talked about so far, and I can expound on some of the work that we're doing to intervene when there has been criminal activity with our youth in the homes.
Yeah, thank you for that. I was just thinking if you can expound on what were those particular programs that were implemented in order to stop or prevent violence. I know you mentioned that some of the avenues that were taken was creating kind of jobs, or trade jobs or education for them to. But also, is there any other kind of projects that are out there that you have the funding would have gone to in order to help curtail youth violence? And just one more question: what was the other survey, if you will, of how COVID contributed to to maybe the escalation of youth violence?
So, we know we're not subject matter experts on this subject. So we've leaned on the community, and, what we did every year, we've stepped up our funding to different organizations. I think this year we were at 14 or 16 million that we gave out over the summer, but there was youth football leagues. There were cheerleading camps. There were, like I mentioned, urban farming and programs that a couple of pastors here did that related to urban farming and community gardening. Those were the types of things. I can tell you what I did In 2020, I'm over the environment. So refuse is part of that, litter, of course, and recycling, et cetera. Litter is a big issue. It's, prevalent, in every city in America, unfortunately. And so, we were thinking of ways to tackle that. And so in 2020, we did 250,000 to fund. Now, this wasn't youth necessarily related, but fund, people that might have been without a job or compromised because of COVID. They were able to earn $15 an hour going out with 5 different partners that we enlisted to manage the grants, but to hire people to go out and clean up every street, that they could throughout the community. And then in 2021, that number expanded to $2.5 million to employ our youth in partnership with the YMCA, who managed the contract. But we had youth all over the city employed, going around picking up trash and litter, and it was a very successful endeavor. All of our programs have been, as our people report back, you think about 2020, when we had everything closed, including our rec centers. And so they didn't have the opportunity to get out and, kind of, for lack of a better term, play, get out and play. It was much more confined, and certainly, in theory, parents still were working. Kids were left unattended, and so that it led to the opportunity for some to get involved in gang activities, and others, maybe they were following their older sibling that might be involved, for instance. And so, we lost some kids in that respect, but we certainly made every effort from a community perspective to make sure that we were providing the programming and the opportunities for them to be involved in things that would hopefully keep them away from that type of activity.
Yeah, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Also you mentioned mental health and the law enforcement being ill-equipped to deal with mental health and other different situations that arise that that also contributes to some violent behaviors. What kind of programs have you implemented, or you help augment in order for to take that pressure off the police officers and or our law enforcement, so that we can, as a community, help address those issues?
So I'm very excited about this program. We started last year, in about June of last year, with what we call the Right Response Unit, and that is housed within our 911 dispatch call center. We have social workers and clinicians that are there, so that when a call taker deems that somebody is in mental distress, that call is transferred over to that social worker and clinician. And it has been a very it's been a great opportunity to divert calls out of the traditional system, where potentially a cop could, would be called, a police officer would be called. They conduct an assessment, they attempt to stabilize and de-escalate the situation. And then if they need to, they'll go back to 911, but hopefully that doesn't happen. And so we've seen the numbers that we've seen from June of 21 through September of 22, there were 1,968 events that triggered the Right Response Unit. They assisted 694 of those, and approximately 30% of those events, they didn't require any type of police response whatsoever. So it diverts an incredible amount of manpower, somewhere around the 750-hour range of officers' time is saved. And I say, it allows them then to go out and work to prevent crime and to solve crimes that much more, because we're all facing this across the country, a shortage of manpower, and it's harder to recruit. So we certainly feel that this is a great program so far. We are now servicing from noon to midnight, Monday through Friday. But the goal is that this becomes a 24/7 operation.
Thank you.
So that's the right response. But then you were asking about some of the others, but that previous to that, and we've had this for some time, what's called a mobile crisis response, or the MCR unit, which is a partnership with a fire paramedic, a cross intervention trained police officer, and then a social worker and clinician, again going towards people with mental health issues or substance abuse. And that's been in existence for many years. I've actually seen this in person operating, and it is really remarkable, the type of compassion that is given towards people in distress. We also have a rapid response emergency addiction crisis team we call REACT. And that's specifically with, again, it's the same type of partnership with a division of fire paramedic, a community intervention trained police officer, and then a clinician that specializes in substance abuse. Those guys that are in fire will tell you that when they are responding and they see the fire uniform, people let their guard down and are much more susceptible to accepting care than if you have somebody in a uniform police outfit, which those guys that are part of the unit that are the specialized police, they wear typically like a polo instead of a traditional uniform. And then finally, we have a program for seniors that and persons with disabilities. It's called SPARK, or Specialized Program Assessing Resource Connectivity. And so that's just fire paramedics and a social worker. But we're, again, trying to make sure that we're hitting on every single type of issue that might come across, and not just traditionally sending the police to answer those calls.
Yeah, I was going to ask Dr. Jenkins to come on in a few seconds, but I would like to just ask one last question. You did mention the clergy or the church. How have the churches been engaging in this process that you have shared with us there in Columbus and the communities that you're serving, and in these particular projects? Yeah. Yes,
certainly. Many of our clergy have started programs of their own, and some don't, but some are very engaged, and we look to them to help with messaging. It can be very influential when you have a pastor speaking to their flock rather than elected officials and government doing the same. So we find that I try to engage them as much as possible when crisis may arise, but also have those conversations. I'm meeting with a bishop of one of the largest churches here in the city on Thursday, just to keep that relationship going, and knowing that, he can call me when there's something of concern, and I can reach out to him when we're trying to, get specific messaging out to the people of Columbus.
Okay, thank you, Council Member. I'd like to ask Reverend Jenkins, we do have a few other questions or statements that are in the chat, but we can get those. Thank you very much. Reverend Jenkins, thank you for coming on, and
thank you.
And as you've been introduced to the council member, do you have any questions or some statements to share with us?
Well,
Dr. Jenkins.
I'm very grateful for your participation here. I'm a Buckeye from Dayton, Ohio, and I love the Ohio character that I see in you and the great people of Ohio. I think that it's so great to see how you're directly involved from the city council. That's so critically important, and also involving the churches, and then in law enforcement too. So my specific request is if you could enlighten us a little bit on how you're addressing the gun problem directly. What have you seen, not just how you're addressing it, but what have you seen that worked to reduce gun violence, whether it's programs to pull in the guns, or whether it's family programs to help, families have a better, single mothers have a better chance with their kids that are being, captured by some of the bad influences. So how do you address what have you seen in Columbus that's been best, that you feel gives us a
Well,
better shot, law enforcement, whatever?
yeah, I'm not going to give a great answer for you because unfortunately our state legislature has circumvented a lot of what we try to do within our rights of home rule, for instance. We had proposed and passed a ban on large magazines and other things that we felt were within our rights to do, and so it was circumvented by the state legislature. In fact, in June of this year, they made it so easy to get a gun. You no longer have to take a course to get a gun of any kind. You can walk in, get a gun, and you do not have to announce that you have a gun if you're pulled over by police. You do have to admit if they ask, but previously you had to announce. And so where we see a lot of the kids getting guns these days is when they steal cars, which is generally for joyriding purposes. They find guns in the car. So that is one way, to me, that's a PSA opportunity on our part. Lock your guns up, make sure that you're not storing them in your car. But we have done some gun buyback programs. And then of course we have I think 5 different ways that you can get gun locks, for your gun. So we do hand those out. But we also know that those that are wanting to commit criminal activities are typically it's easier for them to get. I just was talking with a community member that lives near our fairgrounds, the state fairgrounds, and they said, when are we going to do something about these gun shows where people go in, and they said literally they'll see kids in their neighborhood with the trunk open selling firearms out of the back of them that they've stolen from these gun shows. And they suggested that these gun dealers were sometimes complicit with it, because they would just get the insurance money, and the kids go out and sell it and get these guns on the street. So that was a new angle that I hadn't really considered or heard of before. But we know that it's pretty prolific. Kids don't seem to be having a problem getting guns these days, and it's unfortunate because we know that every day that a kid has a gun is a potential risk of officer involved shootings and so many other things that could happen that could be very alarming and certainly top national news.
This is fascinating, very important. Another question has to do with the carjackings. Are they like major cities across the country, young people 16 to 20? It's been an explosion of carjackings and almost like no concern of the danger or even of hurting people inside the car to get the car. Is that true also in Columbus?
We do have carjackings. I would say just in general, the I saw yesterday, I think from 20 to 21, there was something like 300 Kias, 300 Hyundais stolen in 20. And by this last year, it was 1,400 and 1,500, something along those lines. I mean, truly, if it were me and I had the ability to sue the manufacturers, I would. And I know Milwaukee did, but again, I think not only there was a story in the paper today that just talked about how we're all going to face it in our insurance rates because they will spread that out to everyone. So, this is a real concern that we have. And fortunately, we haven't had we have carjackings, but it's not as bad as, like I said, the thefts. And the thefts with our police say the ages range from 9 years old to 17 years old. I can share with you a story one day. And this is where the intrinsic work that we're trying to do down at the home level, because these parents are distraught. They don't know what to do, and they really don't even know what resources are available. And so we had a meeting recently with mothers of the Kia's boys and Hyundai boys or whatever they're calling themselves. And we had about 75 people in there, and it included police, it included our judges, and that's my assistant in the background there, my cat. But anyway, you know, one question was asked, and my president of the NAACP, Nana Watson, was the moderator, but, you know, asked why are they doing this? And they said, well, our kids are telling us they're bored. And I can understand that. I have a 13-year-old. If I take his computer away, we live on 3 acres and we have, you know, all the fun things that you could do. They're incredibly bored. So I will suggest to you that, you know, these generations that are brought up, you know, glued to electronics are really, there's some long lasting systemic effects to that. Right. And so they're bored, you know, for one thing. And I will share with you a story where, and the parents don't know what to do. They don't know what to do. They can't control their kids. Many times it's a single parent. And, but this one story in particular, one night our police were after 2 kids, 13 and 14 years old, that on one street, they stole 4 cars, and they were always like 1 car behind, you know, trying to catch them. They found them the next morning, asleep in one of our parks in the car with their guns on their chest that they had. And they end up taking them home, and their caregiver was a bedridden grandmother. And so, you know, we've got work to do. And we know, like in Columbus, especially, that it's 150 to 200 kids right now, but, you know, that can easily explode. You know, social media, some of these platforms allowing these things to be broadcast, that's a problem. You know, there's just a lot of issues that need to be addressed. And a little bit further about that meeting that night with the mothers of the Kia boys, Nana asked, you know, what is it that you need? And one of the mothers stood up and they said, we need trust again. We need to be able to trust. And there were, you know, 12 officers in the room. And she said, well, how many of you here trust the Columbus Division of Police? And every hand in the room went up. Every one of them, quite contrary to what people might think, you know, would have been the response. But they said they're doing their jobs. They're picking our kids up. They're taking them where they need to go. She asked, the follow-up question was, well, how many in here trust the judiciary? Everybody's hand went down, because they've been begging them to lock their kids up or do something with their kids, because they know that the next time could actually be their death, you know, like when
exactly.
involved in this. So we've got, you know, a lot of work to do to try to address those issues. And we are actively working on it. We're working with our county partners. We're working with our, you know, nonprofit partners, and we're trying to look at holistic ways to address these issues.
Well, we fully support you, Councilman, and thank you, Chris Fox. Our UPF director there in Ohio will be, you know, a key point. We'll support him to support you, and let us know what you need. Thank you very much. We have a few hundred people in the Columbus area that are also ambassadors for peace. So we'd like to, you know, share more about that to support you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you. Want to open up the floor. Thank you very much for those questions, because they were quite revealing to hear what you had just said. It's one of the things that you said that really touched my heart was, sometimes these kids are faced, many times we know that, extenuating circumstances. And sometimes you don't know which extenuating circumstances they're faced with that allows them to be in those places that engenders violence, if you will, or mischievous activities. And the one who's the truth, you know, why was he out there? It's one of his caretakers is bedridden. What could he do, you know? So those things that we have to look at. I think when I think about what Dr. Madeline had said in this congratulations, and she said all the right response units, these are programs that are community friendly, you know, and I think something like that, the right response to even to that particular, specifically that particular child and a bedridden caretaker. He might not have been out there if it was someone else taking care of him, but he had almost no choice in some respects, and no guidance. That was a forceful guidance to help him out there. So we want to thank you for sharing that piece of nugget. Anybody else would like to share some things? I know that Bill Stoner, you mentioned here, majority of mass shootings have been committed by people under the age of 25. Do you have any information about how weapons become available to them? And I think you kind of shared some of that. That was revealing too. That, you know, I didn't know that those people were stealing guns out of the all these gun shows. I thought they were more secure than that. And are gangs, cartels who come across the southern border involved in the unregistered or stolen weapons that you have shared? Does that play a role in there?
Well, we certainly have gangs in Columbus, Ohio, but I wouldn't say that I could pinpoint, you know, they're to anything that involves the southern border.
Right.
Our gangs are more homegrown, if you will, in Columbus, Ohio. Maybe that just has to do with geography, you know, so far away, although we know that they operate wherever they want to operate. It's just that we don't seem to have that, you know, I can't pinpoint that to that type of gang activity for certain. Trying to think, there was one other thing I just thought of that I was going to tell you, but it'll come back to me.
Yeah, we have time. Anybody else would like to have a question? Or we have Reverend Franklin on there. Reverend Franklin, please share your question.
Yeah, thank you so much, everyone. Can hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay, great. Hey, Councilman Remy, thank you so much for being on the call today. And
My pleasure.
yeah, and thank you so much for all the work that you're doing. You know, one thing that kind of struck me is the point that was said that these young people, right, these teenagers, these kids are bored. And it reminds me of a program I was watching, Oprah Winfrey, I guess maybe 30 years ago. And Oprah Winfrey was saying that the school system is outdated. They are offering instructions, and there's a school system which is designed for a system that suits the needs of a 1959 or that time period. So I'm asking the question, are our school systems being outdated? And if that is the issue, is there a way to be able to create a possibility of reaching out and finding a public partnership with businesses who are in need of trained, skilled workers, where they can come and they can have a representative being part of the Columbus school system, and then have them train these young kids on real skills that are needed in the marketplace. And so I'm just thinking, is there a possibility to be able to help in that respect? Because it seems as though that the class or the curriculum is not relevant towards what the students really need. I mean, they might be thinking to themselves, I can't use this. I mean, how is this going to relate to my reality, right? So this is something that is coming to my mind. And I just want to say, hey, I'm a former Buckeye myself. I'm originally from Cincinnati. So I just wanted to make that shout out.
Lots of Buckeyes on the call today.
Yeah.
Well, I'll try the best I can. I will say that, obviously the school boards run separately from city government, but we really try to engage. And me in particular, my wife is a 20-year veteran of the Columbus City Schools. She's a teacher. My children have gone, and both my daughters still go to Columbus City Schools. And so, I'm particularly interested in what we can do with our 45,000 children that attend our schools. We have worked very hard to make sure that they see career opportunities outside of, the idea that everybody goes to college, we know is fantasy and not reality, and it's not necessary. Some people want to work with their hands. Some people, if construction workers, Columbus, Ohio, since we've got, the Intel award, the $100 billion investment that Intel is making right here, we need something like 35,000 carpenters. We have 17,000 today. So, I mean, there is no shortage of opportunity, especially if you want to get into the trades and work for have a career in union work. There is no shortage of opportunity in Columbus, Ohio. And so, we've developed programs that gear kids from, the high school to expose them to those opportunities. We've created cadet programs in both fire and police, so that they can go in. You cannot carry a gun in law enforcement until 21 in the state of Ohio. But so what do they do in that gap? Maybe a kid does want to be a police officer, but they have the opportunity now. They could get a lot of the training through our cadet program then go right into the academy after that, after they've completed that. So we're always looking for ways to create that opportunity. I'm trying to personally stand up an EMT training program for people in some of our opportunity areas that maybe have some, they may have had some brushes with the law, let's just say, but, introducing them to a life of healthcare and the empathetic ways, that are created when you are exposed and taking care of people that are in need. And so, that we are thinking in those terms all the time. Again, trying to get as much as we can into the schools. Sometimes though, I find the bureaucracy, especially of our school district, to be even more daunting than what we have within city government, which, is remarkable to say. But unfortunately, sometimes you get a lot of people that just don't want to they pass the buck and they pass it on to the next person. But we've got good relationships with the people that can provide internship opportunities, for instance. And so we feel like we're almost there, I would say.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Reverend Franklin, for that question. Just like to add on something I would ask you in reference to that, is you being a council person and your wife being a teacher as well. Now the schools have introduced what they thought it's the trend for education and for career-orientated people, and that's IT classes. But do you think it's good to reiterate or bring back, if you will, all those trades classes that we used to take, a shop class, and also an auto mechanic class? Those are classes that contribute to those people who may not want to go to college, but have always been naturally good with their hands.
So we've got some of that. Yeah, we've got some of that here. My wife taught for 10 years in a middle school called Starling here in Columbus. And she was actually, she got some of her student loan debt forgiven for teaching for so long in a Title I school. But I remember the day, and it was, I think, probably around 2005, 2006, that they got rid of home ec and shop class, across the board in Columbus. But in that school that I'm talking about, they kept French. And I was like, being able to speak a love language in the middle of the inner city just doesn't quite make sense versus the skills that they would have got from shop or home ec. So fortunately, they have brought back, they do have, there's school, part of the school here at Fort Hays. They do have programs that lead right into the trades, whether it be construction, but they also have like auto mechanic programs as well. So we are happy for that. At least they probably could do more, but we're also in a state that has been 20 years. They have not fixed what's been deemed by the courts as an unconstitutional funding formula. So believe that 20 years that the Supreme Court has called the funding system for our schools unconstitutional, and the lawmakers have yet to rectify the problem.
Sure. I have a couple more questions for you. And before that, I'd like to get my dib in. I'm also a Buckeye-rooted person as well. Both of my parents are from Ohio. So
which
go
part?
Buckeyes.
Yeah.
Actually, I have family live in Columbus, Dayton, but our root is Youngstown. Youngstown.
Oh, yeah.
So
I'll tell you, there's a lot of people in Columbus from Youngstown. That's an interesting part of the state.
oh, well, that was the steel mill, and then when they went down, the whole town went down, didn't it? Yeah, so we're grateful. So I just wanted to, but I'm still a Buckeye guy, so by root.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I want to also, Chris Fox had a question. I'd like to share that from this, which is a good friend of mine was so grateful that, he has asked you to come on. He was really excited when he met you. He called me, seemed like he called me 5 minutes after he met you. But
Yeah, we did.
We're
so in the same neighborhood.
Yeah. You'll be a great person. So we're so happy it panned out that you're here. But he did say, what he shared was what's resource, including manpower, is needed for expanding the safety for Columbus. Teachers, law enforcement, and religious leaders overloaded, and parents are losing control. And if you want to ad lib on that, Chris, please do.
That's, yeah, and typing it out, it comes out a little ragged, but what can I do? I live here. This is my hometown. I'm the director for UPF here. I have resources. What do you need? What can I serve you with?
Well, I appreciate that offer, and certainly we will find ways to take you up on it. We're always looking for more resources. I will tell you that we're authorized. Our authorized strength for this year was something like 8,800 employees just for the city of Columbus, and we had gotten down to 7,500. We are moving back up to, I think we've hired about 300 people, but we have a charter amendment on the ballot that will reduce, we're dealing with a civil service that is, 100-year-old, practically 100-year-old, institution that was meant to keep, politicians from hiring their friends, et cetera. But in today's world, it's gone a little bit too far. So you have people like myself as elected officials saying, we want our workforce to look like our community. And so in Columbus, that means about 11% of our residents are from other parts of the world. We are very diverse. We draw people here either through their initial migration or secondary migration to Columbus, Ohio, from all 7 continents equally. And so that's it's pretty astounding. And it's really created this web, this cultural fabric that is making Columbus so special. But we are not hiring those people in our workforce, at least with the city. And a lot of it is that our civil service system is so cumbersome and really not geared for people that English is their, not their native language. So we need to continue to work. We have some charter amendments on right now that'll help with that. But we need to continue to work towards that, because we shouldn't have, you know, somebody that is from, you know, Bhutanese, Nepali, you know, that can't get a job here because they can't proficiently navigate the system. So, you know, and then we're looking at things, you know, by law, we cannot mandate that our police officers, our firefighters live within the city of Columbus. But sometimes that intimate knowledge of living where you work can be very helpful. And so, you know, gearing programs like we give $10,000 grants to those that choose to live within the city, you know, for our firefighters and our police officers. And so doing more things like that to encourage that type of, you know, that they actually live here would be helpful. I believe. And so, we'll, you know, like I said, I'll continue to think of ways that you might be able to help, but nothing, I can't give you anything specific right this second, but we'll keep talking.
You bet we will. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. That's great. Thank you. Thank you. So anyone else like to share something? I know, Nadia, I know you had a question. I didn't understand it 100%. Would you like to come on and just share a little bit of what you were wanting to share, I guess, in reference to the churches as well?
Yeah, my question, sorry, I'm doing tech, so I can't turn on my camera, but I really love that you're routing these calls to social workers and others before you route it through the police, and how much savings and time and money and everything they can be out, you know, doing law enforcement, which is wonderful. Thank you for doing that. It's we've talked about it last week too. This is really I think a trend that's catching fire in our country, thank goodness. You mentioned something about, because I work with churches, about using churches for messaging. I'm sorry, I'm not really sure what you meant by that. If you could just take a little time to talk about that.
So we have, you know, trusted relationships that we've built with all religions. You know, we typically, we always say that city council chambers are the people's house, and we have, we just had a Diwali dinner there last week. But for every celebration, whether it's a Seder dinner or, you know, whatever, you know, different religious celebration that's going on, we will take the time to do that. So every time we open our meetings, we had a Hindu priest there recently. We have somebody that's a rabbi. We'll have, you know, just a Catholic priest, and it goes on and on and on. But over time, we built a really strong relationship throughout our community with these types of individuals from whatever faith that they may be. And if we've got, you know, if we're trying to tackle a problem, and maybe I should step back and just tell you about the Columbus Way, which is actually has been taught at Harvard University. We won the Bloomberg, you know, Climate Action Plan Award back in 2020, and or I think it was 2019 probably. But when we were given that presentation, we came in and we had people from the United Way, we had people from the city, we had people from corporate America, and we were all sitting around talking about how well we all work together. And they kind of were like, yeah, we hear that all the time. Everybody puts on one of these types of you know, presentations, and they're trying to win an award. They say those types of things, and then in reality it never works. Well, it works here. If you don't participate, you don't cooperate, you don't collaborate in Columbus, Ohio, you're typically ostracized. And so but it doesn't come to that, because everybody wants to work together. And so we call that the Columbus Way. And so when we have issues that arise and things that we need the clergy to be be involved with, so they can impact their their flock, for lack of a better term, their congregations, they stand up with their hands up, and they say that they're willing to help. And, you know, many of those have direct access to our youth, more so than any other type of group that we can actually partner with.
Great, thank you. That's beautiful. And you have access to the grandmothers too.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely.
you very much. Thanks, Nadia. Anyone else like to just share one other point or ask a question to the council member?
I would, Reverend Zachary.
Please.
Uh,
Welcome, Wayne.
Thank you, Councilman. I live in the Bay Area, and the problem with non-gun violence has really grown significantly, and to the point that police do not respond. In Columbus, how are you dealing with defunding the police, understaffed police? How are you dealing with that issue and the concerns citizens have for?
Yeah, defunding was a wrong choice of words, and at least in our opinion, in Columbus. We fund our safety forces very well, to make sure that they're able to operate proficiently. But, as I said earlier, I mean, we are facing, a shortage across the country. And so I will share with you that, what I consider, are millions and millions of dollars of investment in this right response that I talked about, making sure that we have mental health clinicians. That's part of the safety spend, right? We're not diverting those funds necessarily from police, but we're investing in that type of response. Makes my division of police much more efficient, because again, like I said, they're actually handling calls that they should be handling and that they're trained to handle, and not, taking a sidestep and going over here that could lead to a whole host of issues. So we like to think of it more as reallocating funds to some degree, but we've had an interesting history in the city. Our contract is one of the most rigid in the country when it comes to promotions and seniority. So unfortunately, it has gotten to the point that, and we don't have school resource officers now, because in 2020, the school board took them out of the schools, and they've yet to ask us to come back in. We're willing to do so, but it's been a challenge, so that there are no school resource officers. But in my example, if I have two candidates that were looking to take on that school resource officer job, and the guy right here signed up day one and this guy signed up day two, this person loves kids and this one hates them, he's going to get the job if he goes for that. So it's unfortunate, but that's the way that this contract is at this point. And so we had never hired a chief from outside the division. In 2020, we promoted somebody within the division on an interim basis. George Floyd happened. That person never made it out of probation. And so the mayor decided that he wanted to hire somebody from outside. And we were fortunate enough to get our chief from the city of Detroit Police Department, Elaine Bryant. She brought her first assistant chief, Potts, down here. And the difference is night and day in how Detroit policed and how we policed. And their mission is to engage the community, get involved with the community. And at the same time that we did all of that, we offered 100 officers $200,000 apiece to retire early. And so we did that. We made a $20 million investment to get some of those people that were part of the old guard out. So we are about 250 officers shy. We have about 1,575 sworn officers right now. But obviously, we're trying to work hard we added a class this year. We have our own police academy. We actually train many different jurisdictions throughout the state of Ohio. But included in our classes, we actually accepted lateral transfers for the first time ever. And so we ended up with about 11. But again, going back to that civil service bureaucracy, it was, we were having people fly back and forth for little things, and it's just not the way that hiring's done. And so we have to get better at that. And so I acknowledge that's important, but we are devoting money to making sure that people feel safe in the city of Columbus.
Yeah. Thank you for your comments. That makes it much clearer. Thank you.
You're
Yeah,
welcome.
thank you. Thank you. As you were speaking, especially when you had shared with us that some city official, police officer came from Detroit to Columbus and engaged in, and that was a way of one helping the other. And I think this is what we're trying to do here on this webinar, is to be a catalyst to bring the extraordinary workers out there and laborers who are helping to make our country, make our cities, make our states safe by virtue of whatever area of expertise or career they're in, maybe, law enforcement, social workers, teachers, political figures, and council persons like yourself. Because as we listen to all of you, and we have listened, there's been some really powerful, avenues that needs to maybe be nationally, have a national interface together, that you can put a pool of the resources and ideas and the best working, what has been the best practices that has some measurable results that you were sharing with some of the measurable results you have that can be implemented based on every state, every city has their own kind of, their own little character, a little nuance of a character, and everything doesn't apply exactly. But the principle of everything applies exactly to, our nationwide platform of neighborhoods and our youth and that what you shared. So here and our webinar, we're just trying to be a catalyst for that. It'd be a bridge. I always say that no man is an island on his own, if you will. If you have to bring them together, then we can have a more formidable force and more formidable ideas and action-oriented projects to bring together that can collectively help the nation as a whole on the issues of gun violence and violence in general. And the violence in general is coming from different angles, as you will. So we're really grateful, Councilman, for your being on with us. You've also enlightened us with some of the things that you have shared. Would you like just to have some last words as we are closing?
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the opportunity and welcome any type of feedback or collaboration that we can do. I always tell people that imitation is the best, form of flattery. So we know we don't have all the answers, and I am constantly either directing my research teams or myself. I'm looking throughout the country for best practices. I will be in Kansas City in a couple of weeks for National League of Cities, which is our really kind of trade organization, 4,500 elected officials from everything from a little village to Los Angeles, New York City, et cetera. And so it's an opportunity for us to get together, collaborate on issues of interest. And they cover everything from affordable housing, homelessness, to economic development and public safety. I mean, it just runs the gamut. And so it really is helpful to find out what other people are doing, because sometimes that idea is just just a step away that can make all the difference within a community. So I'm always happy to share, and certainly looking forward to the opportunity to collaborate if there are opportunities to do so.
Happy to hear that. So we're going to take you up on that as well. We're going to see you again and have you back on. I would like, as we close, to bring Reverend Jenkins, Reverend Franklin, and Chris Fox on. Any other Buckeye out there? Where's our Reverend Franklin?
Are we going to do OHIO? Right.
Go Buckeyes. God bless you. Everyone, that's it.
Thank you, Councilmember Emmanuel Remy. It really was important today. We've had Chief of Police of LAPD. We've worked with the Chief of Police of NYPD and all across the country. We've also had NGO or, not-for-profit organizations helping with families in the communities. This is the first time we've been able to have a current member of the city council, very, very critical to the health and direction of the city. So we can't thank you enough. We learned a lot and we have a lot of hope to work together. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you. Want to thank you, Reverend Jenkins, Dr. Jenkins, for that.
Thank you.
One of the things that Ohio was good for is that we were considered a family state, very family oriented state, and then a football state. That's where we get the Buckeye from. Amen. God bless you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Chris,
Thank you.
for bringing the councilman on. Thank you, Reverend Franklin, for what you have shared with us. And again, we're such a pleasure. And Dr. Jenkins, right, you're the first current councilman that ever have shown up. And we're really grateful for your presence and grateful for the great things that you have shared with us today.
Very good.
God bless you, everyone. See you next
God
time.
bless.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Thank
Okay.
you, Councilman Raymond.
Thank you. God bless
Thank
you
you.
one and all.
Thank you, Chris.
Okay.
Stop the violence.
Go
Thank you,
Columbus way.
Alrighty.
Build up
All
the
right,
family.
thank you.
Alrighty.
All right, thank you, Chris. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Gregory.
Okay.
I won't
All
go to
right.
the program. We need to do more.
Take care.
Excellent.
Hey, Leslie.
considered Buckeye?
Yes.
Oh, thank you,
Hi.
Nadia. Where's Nadia? Did she say that?
You too.
Hey,
Yeah.
welcome.
Yeah, Nadia is a
All
backbone. Thank you. All right, everyone. God bless. Thank you,
Yeah.
EJ.
Okay.
Hey, Reverend Oliver, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye,
God bless
everybody.
you. God